24 years. Are you doing the maths? I am not of this age group. It is an honor for me to be here today. And thank you so much, Farah Mohammed, for inviting us. And it is an honor because I feel that I'm privileged to be part of this conversation. To look at these delegates and to know that they have the power to change a whole lot, not only for themselves, but for other women and girls around the world. So my topic is on global agriculture, food policy, responsible agricultural investments. But I'm going to start this conversation by talking about hunger, because after all, why agriculture? Why food policies if it's not to address the one thing that we should really be, today, to talk about hunger, so many people are suffering from hunger. And before I continue this conversation, you may have heard from my voice that it's either a cold or an allergy. But for either of them, my voice is not the way I normally sound. I can guarantee you I have a nicer voice than this. Yeah. So, hunger. We've heard the figures. 1 billion, and that's so huge, 1 billion hungry people. And who are these people? Who are these people? They are women, men, children. They live in our communities, they live in our countries, they live in other countries, but they're actually human beings out there. And they're hungry, not because they choose to be hungry, but because they are made vulnerable by situations around them. And that's why I hesitate to talk about vulnerable women and girls, because we know that we are strong, we are resilient, and we manage to make it work against all the odds. So what we should be talking about, we are women and girls who find ourselves in vulnerable situations. So now to the issue of hunger. Hunger, malnutrition, and why is it so important? We're talking about economic empowerment of women and girls, but why are we talking about hunger issues? And let me make a distinction here. When I talk about hunger, I'm not talking about the kind of hunger you see on television. That is critical, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. Because there are many more women, children, and men who are suffering from hunger, which is not visible, but which impacts their very development, the development of their households, their communities, and their nations. Let's go back to the issue of education. We all know how important it is to get education if you want to develop in this world, right? You're all educated, we're all educated. And now we are so proud of the fact that many of our governments are reaching the MDG 3 goal of primary school education. But think about how those same children who are going to primary schools getting an education, think about the hunger issue. And I'm not talking about the visible hunger issue, I'm talking about the invisible hunger issue, which impacts the educability. I hope that is a word in English. If it's not, my excuse is I studied in Norway. So I tend to make up words sometimes, right? Because mental development, we know that you need nutrients, certain nutrients, for mental development, for physical development. And when that is not there, we're talking about the quality of the food, which links it to agriculture again. When that is not there, you can go to school and you can do the best that you can, but you haven't reached your potential. So let's talk about malnutrition, hunger, and the agriculture issue. Now, agriculture did make a comeback. We know that, because it was the decline of agriculture, and suddenly there was the rise and rise and rise of agriculture. And that was because the food crisis, 2007, 2008. So agriculture is on the agenda again. But why is it so important to talk about agriculture here now and food security? Because we need to ask one critical question. Where are the voices of the women and the girls in this debate on agriculture, where agriculture is now on the agenda? we're talking about investing in agriculture. And there is a lot of investment in agriculture today, and it is great. But we still need to hear the voices of the girls and the women in agriculture. We also have been looking at the, if you look at the MDG report of 2011, Millennium Development Report, we are making great strides. It is true, if you look at all the statistics there, but there are still major gaps, especially for rural communities. And why are they so important? Because millions and millions and millions of these communities depend on agriculture for their livelihoods. And women farmers, you saw the video just now, where we're talking about women farmers. And it's so nice to see them up there as women farmers. But the reality is, and you need to look at the State of Food and Agriculture that FAO launched in 2011, where no matter how much we say about the women farmers, we're going out there to support them, we know that they don't have the same access to productive resources as their male counterparts. But they are farmers, and they're producing. For example, FAO calculated that if these women farmers had the same access to productive resources as their male counterparts, their farms would yield up to 20 to 30% more. So what are we waiting for? Total agricultural output would increase by 2.5 to 4%, and the number of hungry in the world would be reduced by between 12 to 17%. So we know all of this. We know all of this, and we are investing in agriculture. Every single government is talking about agriculture now, which is, I have to say this again, is extremely important. And we're really happy that agriculture is on the global agenda again. But let's go back to women, especially women farmers. And think about it this way. Don't just think about women as women farmers. You saw that video. The woman farmer is a mother. The woman farmer is a carer. Think about women, reproductive role, because we do get pregnant. And we give birth to not only the girl child, but the boy child as well, right? And apart from our reproductive roles, our productive roles, where we are farmers, we produce, and our social roles as well. We nurture, we care. So think about women and their multiple roles. When we think about agriculture, when we think about hunger issues, etc. And think about this situation, where as a pregnant mother, or as a pregnant woman, maybe this is my first child, so I'm not a mother yet. As a pregnant woman, I go into pregnancy malnourished, and that is often the case in many, many, many developing parts of the world. I go into pregnancy malnourished. And I'm carrying a fetus for 9 months, and that fetus depends on me for all the nutrients it needs to develop properly. But of course, my diet is poor. Even if the quantity is adequate, the quality is inadequate. And I go through that pregnancy and give birth to a low birth weight baby, less than 2,500 grams. And that baby has a poor start in life if there are no interventions to address that situation, and that child goes through it's up to the second birthday without any intervention, still malnourished, fifth birthday, and you send that child to school. That child may look okay, but at school, that child hasn't reached its full mental development. And then along the life cycle, think about it if it's a girl child, an adolescent girl. We know about early pregnancies, teenage pregnancies, we call them. We know about early marriages. In many parts of the world, in my country, in some of your countries, in your friends' countries, we know about early marriages, where a child gets married at a very early age, while still a child and gives birth to children. Think about the consequences, not only the babies that are produced, but that child, that adolescent girl, out of school, early marriage, many children, and the vicious cycle of malnutrition continues. So why am I saying all this when we're talking about agriculture? When we talk about agriculture, who are we thinking of? We think about the women farmers. We think about the smallholder farmers, the small-scale farmers. And yet, they're the very same communities who have a high rate of malnutrition. And you have all been hungry at one time or the other, haven't you? You have felt hunger. I mean, it's not, you have felt hunger not because you don't have food to eat. You have felt hunger because maybe you're too busy. You have to do something, so you keep on putting it off. But think about that feeling of hunger. And some may deliberately, maybe, no, definitely not you, but some do choose to be hungry because they're thinking about their figures, right? But it's the same feeling. But think about people who don't choose to be hungry and they feel hungry. Think about how lethargic you can feel if you're hungry, right? So it's not even, sometimes it's not even about the quantity of food, but iron deficiency anemia. Because I know, even if you're not a nutritionist, you've talked about, oh, I think I'm iron deficient. That's why I'm feeling so tired. Now think about the woman farmer. Think about the workload. Think about the hard work that she has to do. So we're talking about productivity. We're talking about supporting the woman farmer to produce more. Now think about her own nutritional status and her own well-being. If she is malnourished, then her productivity level is also compromised. So there are very many ways in which nutrition is critical. And the reason why I'm saying this, I want you, in all your deliberations about global agriculture, about empowering the woman, about empowering the girl, to go back to basics, to think about the fact that whilst something we take for granted, good food, eat when we can, there are many, many, many women and girls out there who don't have that choice. And who, even when they have the amount of food that they require, the quality leaves much to be desired. So they are malnourished, which we call hidden hunger. It may not be apparent, but it impacts the way they can be educated. It impacts their productivity, and it impacts their contribution to their own well-being. So I was also giving a topic on responsible agricultural investments. Now, hey, I don't think I'm going to go there. And you know why? It's because it is still very much being debated. Because 7 principles were developed for responsible agricultural investments. And maybe I can explain a bit. It's about large-scale land acquisition. For example, if in this particular country they have a lot of land, and you have another country where they have the resources but don't have the land, and they need to feed their people, they can negotiate with the government of that particular country and lease the land or buy the land, whatever, so that the food that can be grown there can be sent to their country to feed their populations. Now, there has been a lot of debate about this, and a number of principles have come up, which include land and resource rights, food security, consultation and participation, meaning that you need to consult first so that there is no negative implication for that large land-scale acquisition from developing countries. But I want to talk about something else, and I want to challenge you. We know the facts. We know that we talk about women smallholder farmers, but many of them don't own the land on which they grow the food. They contribute either to their husband's land or they contribute to the communal farm. They don't own the land. And as I said earlier, and if you look at the FAO report, they don't have the same access to the productive resources. They don't have access to credit. They don't have access to the same technology. They don't have access to extension services. So why don't you think about this? Let the work continue on the 7 principles for the responsible agricultural investment, RAI, why don't you think about making it more responsible in terms of looking at it through the eyes of the women and the girls? We know the facts. How can agricultural investment be responsible if we know that the women farmers who we're saying we're targeting, we're focusing on, don't have access to productive resources? And we know that if they had access to productive resources, their yields would increase so much more. So why don't we look at it that way and come up with how can we make agricultural investments more responsible by investing to make sure that women have access to what they need to be able to produce more. And you are so bright. I'm sure you can be so innovative to think about how you can come up with your own list of how do we make agricultural investments more responsible, right? How do we make sure that women have access to land? How do we make sure that women have access to technology? How do we make sure that women have access to the seeds they talked about? How do we make sure that women have access to credit? And the list goes on. So, let me repeat this again. Be innovative. Come up with an alternate, responsible agricultural investment where you look at it through the eyes of the women and the girls out there and see what list you come up with. And that other list, we can continue working on it, but this is your list, and I can guarantee you, we need that list because we all know what the issues are, but we still have to go that extra mile of actually addressing those issues. And don't forget about nutrition, because you cannot look at women farmers and talk about them producing more when you don't look at their own situation of nutritional status, of how that nutritional status can affect their productivity, and how nutritional status can affect the young girls being educated at school. And then to come back again to another issue of young people. Global agriculture. If my mother and my father are farmers, and I'm growing up and I'm being sent to school, and I look at my mother and my father, and I see that throughout their lives as farmers, they remain poor. Now, will I be motivated to go into agriculture? No, I mean, I need to hear you say it out loud, don't just shake your head. Will I be motivated to go into agriculture? No. Exactly. And that is the situation today. Global agriculture, we cannot sustain agriculture or even how much we invest in it if we don't take on the young people, if we don't get them motivated enough to stop talking about going away to Europe or elsewhere. And I'm talking about the developing world now, because that's what's happening, right? How can we get young people to get into agriculture? That's the only way to sustain agriculture. Now, any of you been to rural communities? Hands up. You've been to rural communities? Good. Now, let's be honest with ourselves. Would you want to stay there? That's being very honest. So why would we then sit back and say, why are the young people migrating out of the rural areas? Why are they not there doing agriculture like their parents have done before them? It's a very important question. So I'm bringing in this issue again because it's about rural development. It's about rural development. Because if we don't, with all the investments we're doing, if we don't also target rural development and make sure that we make the environment conducive in a way that young people want to stay behind, young girls and young boys, and work the land, then we're not going to get anywhere with all our talk about agriculture, investing in agriculture. So this is another area also that I think should come up. Where are the young people? And I'm talking about young girls and young boys. Where are their voices? Because their voices need to be heard. How can we motivate young people to get into agriculture and not to see agriculture through looking at their parents and thinking, this is not the way I want it for myself. So agriculture is only for poor, uneducated people. It is not for me. So that is another issue that needs to come up. And we also need to ask the question, you're all representing individual countries here. Maybe you need to ask, in the agricultural policies, is there any policy that is targeting, do you have anywhere in those policies targeting young people, young girls and young boys? Do you have a youth policy that is encouraging them to go back to the land? Those are issues we need to raise. And then, I also wanted to bring us back to the issue. We heard it today, and Farah repeated it after the minister, about engaging men and boys. We're here talking about empowering women and girls, but we also need you to be advocates for engaging men and boys. And the key message there is, as I said earlier, as a woman, I give birth to a boy or a girl, and I want both of them to grow up healthy, and as we used to say, wealthy and wise. But that was before your time, that was my time. Remember 24 years plus, 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 plus. I won't say anymore, right? So, how do we get the message across that empowering women and girls is not about taking anything away from the men and the boys, but it is about making it better for the women and the girls and the men and the boys. Because after all, when a woman produces food, when a woman has an income, we know there's a lot of information out there, a lot of research has been done that shows that women make sure that everybody in the household eats. And a lot of research also shows, which has been mentioned earlier, that when a woman is educated, then her children have a better chance of surviving, have a better chance of going to school, being educated. So men and boys don't lose out by us focusing on women. It doesn't take away anything away from them. So that is the advocacy that should go out there, how to be inclusive of men and boys so that we don't antagonize the men and boys. They are part of the solution, and they benefit from whatever we're doing for women and girls. And then, on another issue also, which is also related to global agriculture, food policies, and responsible agricultural investments. In fact, I should even talk about responsible agricultural investment again, because I've given you the challenge to come up with a list to make it more responsible. Do we know how many women ministers of agriculture we have out there? Because agriculture, when it comes to the decisions, unfortunately, it's still very male-dominated. And in a number of the documents you read, unfortunately also you see women added as an afterthought, because it's so easy to plunk in women everywhere in the document, and that makes us think that women are very much out there. But we need to talk about, agricultural ministers, where are the women? Agricultural policies, let's get the voices of the women in there. Let's get the voices of the smallholder farmers in there. And I'm not just talking about farmers, women farmers who have made it and who are in commercial farming. I'm talking about the smallholder farmers who may not be educated by our standards of education, but they have the local knowledge, and that is what is important. We also, I believe, put in local knowledge as an afterthought. Women have local knowledge about seeds. Women have local knowledge about, technology they used to use before. Women have local knowledge. But are we really tapping that local knowledge? So we should raise our voices. How do we get that local knowledge to the forefront to inform our policies? So I don't know how much more time I have, but I think I'm going to stop here. But please remember the challenge. Remember the challenge of coming up with responsible agricultural investments, and remember that no matter how much you try, you cannot empower women who are malnourished, who are hungry. So we need to also make sure that our nutrition policies, and that's why there's so much effort now to put in the nutrition in agriculture, because before it used to be agriculture, food production, but now we're talking about agriculture and nutrition. So thank you so much. Yes. And I'm proud to say that not once did I cough, not once did you say anything around this area. So thank you so much, whoever was looking after me. Yeah.
Okay, so let me
Okay.
we'll have you stay here. So we have a tradition where whenever we invite a speaker to make an address, that they also agree to take a few questions. We always start with the delegates. So Coralie has a microphone, and I'm sure the delegates have a number of questions. We only have about 10 minutes, so please keep your questions very short, and your answers as well, very short. So who has a question, please raise your hand. Coralie will bring you a mic.
So you talked a lot about practices to keep children in the fields, and I know when we went to the rural areas in Mexico, one of the biggest problems they had was keeping men in the country because they're going to get money elsewhere. Do we also need to focus on that?
Do we need to?
Should I repeat myself?
Yeah. Just the last part, yeah.
Should we also focus on that?
Yeah. Should I take more? Okay. Yes, because it is known that when things are hard in the community, that the men migrate because they go out to earn an income. But that places a double burden on the women, because it makes women not only staying behind to manage the household, to manage the family, feed the family, manage the field, do whatever it takes, they stay behind. But the men migrate because they're going out to look for an income. So I think there are two ways to address that question. One is whatever efforts we make to keep the young people in the community, those same efforts will also keep the men there, because if they see that, I mean, the rural development, there is rural development, and they can make a living from staying in the community, they will stay. But on the other hand also, I want us to focus on women. When women are left in this situation, what do we do to help them? Because they have so much on their shoulders. So we need to really take that as a particular situation and as a particular issue and see how do we help those women, help themselves and their families.
Please, I wish to ask, what can we really do? Because actually, what can we really do to keep the youth in the rural areas? Because I think the many problems we are facing now, it's that many people are really moving out, and maybe we are going to run out of food in the near future. So what can we really do in order to keep the young ones in the rural areas? Because maybe the old people are growing older and they can no longer work. So to sustain the agriculture, what do we do?
Well, it's what I said earlier. We all talk about rural development, but let's listen to the young people and listen to what will make them stay in the communities. Because if the community is developed enough to make the young people find what they want in that very community, then I believe many of them will stay. And by the way, it's mostly the young boys that migrate. because the young girls tend to stay and help their mothers, and they continue in that vicious cycle of malnutrition and poverty. So the rural development should also address and make it better for the rural girls to stay.
According to my knowledge, agriculture includes farming, forestry, as well as fishery.
And livestock.
And livestock. So I just wanted to know, like, are there other policies that you are working on that are like including women, not just only as like commercial farmers, but also as like working within the forestry sector and also the fishing sector? Because it's quite like a broad, because agriculture is quite broad.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to know that.
Yeah, we were talking about women here as producers, but obviously we know that at the community level, women also look after livestock. And even if they don't own the livestock that they're looking after, they look after livestock. So we have organizations like FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization, that works with these women in terms of supporting them with livestock and with other areas of agriculture. But one thing I should mention also, the World Food Program, what we're doing now, as you know, we are a food assistance organization. And we have moved from being only food aid, where we went into crisis situations and helped people who were suffering from hunger by giving them food. Now what we're doing is, we have several tools in our toolbox, which is all about food assistance. But where we try, instead of bringing the food from outside, what we try to do now is we do local procurement. And in that way, we provide a market for farmers in the particular region, in a particular country, and at the same time, we do our regular food assistance support for people who are in need of that support. And we have an initiative called Purchase for Progress, where we're actually targeting smallholder farmers. And in targeting smallholder farmers, we're making a specific effort to look out for women smallholder farmers, to buy their produce, and in that way, give them a market, and also in that way, increase their income. But one thing I also mentioned in talking about the responsible agricultural investment, and it's about food processing. Food processing, because in all the discussion on agriculture, we focus more on the production and not on the food processing. Because if you go to any of these communities, I mean, think about the communities. You have mangoes, you have so much produce, but they go to waste. These women transfer those produce to the markets, but by the time they get to the markets, those produce are rotten, or they have to sell them very cheaply, because if they keep them, they don't have no storage facilities. So that's something we need to talk about as well, processing.
Do you think it's a good idea to get involved young people in the research process? I mean, in order to improve the agricultural techniques, or maybe apply workshops in their communities where they also can be involved in the agriculture?
To involve young people in research?
Yes.
And agriculture, yes. There are some schools now that are teaching agriculture, but we need to do this better. And not include just young people in agricultural research, where they think that the only way they can be involved in agriculture is to continue that research. But how can we motivate through the teaching to get them to actually go back to the land and say they are going to be farmers and they're proud to be farmers? And that's what is still missing. Thank you very much.